Welcome to the pro wrestling reality. For a long time, fans and insiders who have been following that major entertainment industry from the beginning, long before Hulkmania was running wild and at the forefront of national media attention, before WrestleMania was at its absolute peak with 93,000 fans in attendance. Those fans are sure to have very fond and emotional ties to that original, high-flying, high risk taking superstar, Jimmy the Superfly Snuka. He has had the very vast and spanning career within the industry, having matches up until 2014. Although in the more recent years of the career, his high-flying, in-ring style had seemingly changed to adapt a more slower-paced in-ring work style. But even still, the Superfly was having fans at ringside emotional, as he spent most of those later appearances interacting with the fans at ringside during his passionate entrances, where he was often seen lovingly embracing the fans in those later years. His most memorable industry moment to most fans is the night the Superfly flew from the top of the steel cage, captivating the imaginations and hearts of fans at that time with his aerial risk-taking. And you got to remember now, this was years before something like seeing a major entertainment superstar leaping from the top of the cage became almost seemingly a week-to-week spectacle throughout the various entertainment promotions. The Superfly, years later, would once again fly off the top of the cage in the year 2000 while performing under one of those major promotions at 56 years old. And once again, of course, having fans very emotional, very hot, and also taking some fans right back to the peak of their youth. As risk-taking and as wild as Jimmy was inside of the ring, he also lived a fast lifestyle outside of it as well, running around with the 21-year-old woman on the side, had a passion for fast cars and expensive luxury colognes. So in many respects, myself and the Superfly seem to share a lot in common. He often indulged in various vices, including his notorious use of cocaine. He would also become known for often drinking heavily, smoking vast amounts of tobacco and marijuana. The Superfly would also use steroids throughout his now once historic Hall of Fame career. Shockingly, the Superfly's bizarre and frightening, even destructive behavior would unfortunately not stop there. The Superfly allegedly had both an untamed burning passion and hatred towards women. In a truly frightening news article, it was reported that while in the initial stages of a relationship with a woman named Nancy Argentino, the Superfly would introduce himself to her family. He would sit stoically in silence, staring at the different members of the family, seeming to be in some sort of seething rage, or perhaps in a biologically primal, agitated, and aggressive sexual state. Another frightening, reoccurring trait of the Superfly was that at various times, while visiting Nancy Argentino's family, he would often fly into a sudden rage, suddenly having that trademark crazed look in his eye, as he would then violently start shaking, and then would raise his hand while exhibiting a choking gesture towards the women. At times, the various Argentino women would become so frightened by this aggression displayed by the Superfly that they would often quickly leave the room. When they would leave the room, Snuka would then chase after them all over the house, offering them cocaine. Good Lord Almighty. I mean, we all know the 80s was a time for testing limits, indulging in vices and deviant behaviors, experimenting. But I mean, some of this is just sick and absolutely going too far. And shockingly, these allegations would be some of the lighter claims, that were brought forward towards the Superfly at this time. In another frightening report that was brought forward to me for this investigation, it seems that now, if this information is correct, that during a night on the road between live events, Snuka and Nancy were spending the night at a local New York hotel. At some point in the night, Argentino and Snuka started having a heated exchange behind the locked hotel room door. In a split instance, police had been called to the establishment at close to almost 2 a.m. in the morning to respond to a woman screaming in terror. Police arrived at the hotel to see Snuka exhibiting what I could only describe as almost explicit, prehistoric-esque, vulgar display of power. Snuka was, good Lord, naked. dragging Nancy down the hallway by her hair, while she was also undressed, kicking and screaming. Now, as reported by insider sources on the scene of this troubling domestic situation, it took not only various law enforcement officers to subdue the Superfly at the peak of his untamed rage, but also police dogs were brought in to assist officers to take down Snuka. Now, it was never made clear exactly what may have caused this situation between Nancy and Snuka, whether it be a certain intimate bedroom demand or position that Snuka was making that was turned down, or Snuka perhaps thinking Argentino was speaking to another man. But good Lord, I have been covering this major entertainment industry for almost 15 years. And I have never in my life heard a story as shocking as this. After Snuka attended a taping for that major entertainment company, he returned to his hotel room where Argentino was waiting. When Snuka returned, he found Nancy gasping for air and could see yellow fluid oozing from her mouth and nose. When Snuka found Argentino in this state, he went on to call the 911 services. Although shockingly, according to police reports, Snuka did not alert medical services to Argentino's condition until hours later. Argentino was taken from the motel room and brought to local hospital, where she was officially declared dead only hours later. She was found to have numerous cuts and bruises all over her body. And it was later ruled that her cause of death was from a traumatic brain injury, which seemingly was consistent with a moving head striking a stationary object. As shocking as it is to think of that trademark crazed look of Snuka being the final sight that Nancy would witness in her young life, it is even more disturbing to know that the charges were not pressed at this time against the high-flying, risk-taking entertainment superstar. Years later, on a local shock jock AM radio program called Oopie, Snuka was confronted about the situation with Argentino. Snuka was pressed on the issue of Argentino's controversial death, and Snuka responded. And tonight, now fans, we were unable to get permission to play this radio interview. So I am going to read the transcript of the conversation between Oopie and Snuka. So essentially, this would be Snuka speaking on the situation with Argentino here now. We were driving down to the Allentown for the TV the next day. So the girl, wanted to use the bathroom, so she got out and went to go use the bathroom. I pulled over to the side, and I guess after she got done, she came back over like a stream that was there, and she jumped and slipped and banged her head. And I thought she was okay. I'm waiting in the car. And then sure enough, I look out and go, my goodness, what's going on there? I was going nuts. AM radio shock jock host Opie then asks, now, were you a suspect at all? Did they suspect you? And Snuka then responds to these major allegations by saying, oh, well, they were asking me questions and all that stuff, and, I had to tell them the truth. My God. With everything that we know now, I will never know how men can come up with this crap. For years of numerous appearances within the industry, including a high-profile main event program with Chris Jericho on a WrestleMania match card, authorities finally caught up to Snuka, and he was brought to trial for his alleged involvement in Nancy Argentino's death. Although seemingly, especially for that Argentino family, that the justice for Snuka's actions were to finally be settled. Snuka, sickeningly, pleaded not guilty for his involvement in Nancy's death. And then, in another shocking turn of events, good Lord, Snuka was then essentially, found, if I'm reading this information here correctly, unfit to stand trial due to a shocking recent dementia diagnosis. The once strong vitality that Snuka had in those early years had now, at this point, all but diminished. And due to his declining health issues, all of the charges brought forward to the Superfly were then dismissed. Despite his long-spanning career in that major entertainment company, Snuka was removed from that company Hall of Fame in 2015. Although in recent years, the daughter now, Tamina Snuka, is working under that same major company. And even recently had fans very emotional when on that major stage she performs Snuka's trademark dive, having fans very emotional as the spirit of that high-flying, risk-taking legend was soaring through the air once again during a major, high-profile main event match on the card. Although this was truly meant to be a feel-good moment for longtime fans, I personally can't help but think of the horror on the faces of the Argentino family after suffering for decades in silence in relation to Snuka's actions and possible involvement in their relative's death, allegedly at the hands of that industry wild man. And to this day, Snuka will never face justice for his possible involvement in the death of Nancy Argentino.